Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to get into something really fascinating, a new way to think about our cultural and linguistic identities. This is especially for those of us who feel like we're living between different worlds. It's called the Four Places model, and it's basically a map for understanding our own complicated inner lives.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like a bridge? Like you have a foot on one side, a foot on the other, but you're also this thing in the middle that doesn't fully belong to either place. It's a super common feeling for anyone who's multilingual or multicultural. The real question is, how do we actually understand what's going on inside when we feel that way? So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll touch on a classic idea called the third place and see why it doesn't always tell the whole story. Then we're going to look at a totally different way to think about the self, pulling from some really interesting sources. That'll lead us right into the main event, the Four Places model. And to make it real, we'll see how it pops up in French rap music, of all places. Finally, we'll talk about how you can use this as a kind of map for your own mind.
Okay, so first up, we're going beyond the third place. To really get the new model, we have to understand the idea that came before it and see where it falls a little short.
So for a long time in intercultural studies, the big idea has been this thing called the third place. It's basically that in-between space, right? That hybrid zone where cultures meet, mix, and create something new. You can think of it as the spot, literally or figuratively, where all the intercultural action happens.
But here's the problem. The third place is great at describing where the cultural mixing happens. What it doesn't tell us much about is the who or the how. It doesn't really give us a map for our own inner world. Our feelings, our reactions, how we position ourselves as we're navigating all this. For that, we're going to need a different tool. And this is where things get really cool. To find that deeper map, the scholar behind this model, Chantal Crozet, looks to two places you wouldn't normally expect in language studies: Indian philosophy and transpersonal psychology. I mean, what a fascinating way to approach this, right? And here is the absolute key idea that she found. In Indian philosophy, there's this distinction between two kinds of self. First, there's the lowercase self, or jiva. That's our ego, our personality, the cultural roles we play. It's the I that's always changing. But then there's the uppercase self, or Atman. This is a deeper, absolute core, an unchanging witness that exists beyond all language and culture. I love this analogy for making sense of it. Just think of that deep, unchanging self as a huge ocean. All of our different cultural identities, our little selves, they're just waves on the surface. They're moving, they're changing, they look different, but they're all part of the same single body of water.
And listen, this isn't just some abstract philosophy. It taps into a real human feeling. Just listen to this quote from a multilingual speaker named Jack Wong. He talks about searching his whole life for a culturally neutral persona. That's it right there. He's talking about that deep intuition that there's a core part of us that exists underneath all the cultural layers.
Okay, so with that whole idea of self versus self in mind, let's finally dive into the Four Places model. Think of it as a practical map for your inner GPS when you run into cultural differences. All right, here's the whole model at a glance. I know it looks like a lot, but don't worry, we are absolutely going to break down each piece. It maps out 4 different positions or places we can find ourselves in when we're faced with difference. Just notice for a second how it looks at our inner state, how we relate to other people, and what that means for our identity. So let's start with the first place, rejection of difference. We've probably all seen this, or maybe even been here ourselves. It's when something unfamiliar feels, unsettling, maybe even threatening, and so you just reject it. Your worldview is really solid, and your identity is basically, I am my culture, period. Then we have the second place, enjoyment of difference. Now this is your classic multiculturalism. I love ethnic food, I love foreign movies. Difference is seen as this cool added value. But, and this is a big but, it's usually only enjoyed as long as it doesn't actually challenge your core worldview. The identity here is something like, I am my two cultures. Now the third place is where we see a really big shift. This is about embracing difference. You move past just tolerating it and start to see it as something that can genuinely change and enrich you. And listen to the identity shift here. It goes from I am my cultures to I use my cultures. See that? There's less attachment and a lot more openness to being transformed by an experience. And finally, we have the fourth place, the transcendence of difference. Now, this is so important. This isn't the final level you unlock. It's actually the foundation for all the other places. This connects right back to that capital S self we talked about. It's that quiet, culturally neutral space inside all of us where we feel a universal connection, where you can feel you and I are one. The identity here is realizing, hey, something in me is totally free from all these cultural boundaries. All right, so that's the theory. But what does this stuff actually look like out in the world? Well, to make it concrete, let's see how these 4 places show up in the lyrics and videos of some French rappers. Let's kick things off with the rapper Kerry James. Just take in this one line from his song, Letter to the Republic.
No one can integrate when rejected. Wow, you could just feel the first place in that, can't you? He's responding to a feeling of being rejected by the French state, and so his art positions him in direct opposition to that dominant culture. He's building an identity from that very real experience of rejection. Now for the second place, let's look at Mix Solar. In his music video for Hee Ho to Africa, he literally shows 2 versions of himself, one dressed as French, the other as African. He's standing on a bridge, holding both identities, but they're still separate. He's clearly navigating this division, trying to find a way to connect these 2 parts of who he is.
And then we get to the third place with Rashid Taha. The title of his song, Teki Toy, is this brilliant play on the French phrase for "Who are you?" And his lyrics give a really profound answer to that question.
And the answer is, you are me and I am you. This is pure third place. Taha's music just smashes genres together. Rock, punk, North African rye. He's not just holding 2 identities side by side. He's creating a whole new fluid, global identity that makes you question if we were ever really separate to begin with.
And finally, an artist who really points toward the 4th place is Abd al-Malik. His work is this amazing blend of rap and slam poetry. And in songs like L'Alchimiste, he brings in this spiritual, universal perspective. He's pointing to that sacred place inside us all that can allow us to live peacefully together, tapping right into that foundational, culturally neutral self.
So after all that, what's the point? What do we do with this model? Well, that brings us to our final section, seeing this as a map for your own mind. Because this isn't about judging people or putting them into boxes. It's a tool for self-awareness, and it's especially powerful for educators or really anyone living between cultures.
Look, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that this is a dynamic map, not a ladder you have to climb. We can all move between these places, right? You might be in the first place about one topic and the third place about another, and it's all grounded in that 4th place of our shared humanity. It reminds us that we are not our worldviews. We have worldviews, and we can choose to change them. So I'll leave you with a question to think about. In your own life, what place do you find yourself in most often when you're trying to connect with the world?